Whenever you make a sound in an empty room, it echoes back. That echo tells you something simple. I exist. I was heard. Now imagine growing up in a room where nothing echoes, where your emotional signals, sadness, fear, excitement, curiosity, vanish into silence. Not because no one was there, but because no one noticed. And slowly, quietly, your nervous system learns something devastating. My inner world doesn't matter. That belief doesn't feel dramatic. It feels normal. And it shapes everything. When a child reaches out emotionally, they aren't always asking for solutions. Sometimes they only want recognition. A glance, a nod, a softened expression. Something that says, I see you, you're real. But when that reflection never arrives, or arrives inconsistently, the child doesn't think, something is wrong with this environment. Children don't have that framework. They think, something is wrong with me. And that is where emotional neglect begins. Not with abuse, not with violence, but with absence. Psychology has spent decades studying trauma as something loud. A crash, a betrayal, a catastrophe. Something you can point to and say, here, this is where it broke. But emotional neglect is quiet. It's the birthdays where no one noticed your disappointment. The hours crying alone, waiting for footsteps that never came. The moments when you tried to explain something important and watched someone's eyes drift away. Nothing technically happened, and yet something essential didn't. And that absence leaves marks that are subtle, persistent, and deeply misunderstood. Here's the developmental reality. Children learn what they feel the same way they learn language, through reflection. When a caregiver says, you look sad, or that scared you, they're not just naming emotions. They're teaching the child that inner states exist, that they're meaningful, and that they deserve attention. When that mirroring doesn't happen, the child grows into an adult who struggles to identify their own emotions. Not because they're disconnected, but because they were never taught the language of their inner world. There is a clinical name for this, alexithymia, difficulty identifying and describing emotions. And it appears far more often in people who experienced emotional neglect, not as a flaw, but as a missing developmental step. This produces a very specific adult profile. High functioning, reliable, competent, the kind of person everyone assumes is fine, because being fine became their survival strategy. They learned early that needing less was safer than needing more. So they became self-sufficient, independent, emotionally contained. From the outside, it looks like strength. Inside, it often feels like emptiness. Like life is happening slightly behind glass. Muted, flat, hard to fully touch. And then, there are relationships, which is where the wound becomes visible. Because the person who grew up feeling unseen doesn't just struggle to connect. They often panic when connection becomes real. Compliments feel uncomfortable. Care feels suffocating. Consistency feels suspicious. Love feels like something you're waiting to lose. So you deflect, distance, minimize, detach. Not because you don't want closeness, but because closeness was unpredictable, and unpredictability taught your nervous system to brace for disappointment. So, you adapted. You became the one who doesn't need much, who doesn't ask, who handles everything alone. But needs don't disappear. They just stop making noise, because they learned noise doesn't work. Here's the part most people never understand. None of this was weakness. It was intelligence. You adapted to survive. The quiet child learned silence created safety. The funny child learned laughter earned attention. The achiever learned success created worth. The caretaker learned usefulness created belonging. These were brilliant solutions to emotionally impossible environments. But survival strategies don't automatically expire. So long after the danger is gone, your body still reacts as if it remains, flinching at intimacy, struggling to name feelings, feeling uneasy when someone treats you gently. And yet, this is where hope quietly enters. The nervous system can relearn. The brain can rewire. Emotional awareness can be built. But healing this doesn't look dramatic. It looks subtle. It starts with noticing your anger instead of dismissing it, letting sadness exist without explaining it away, pausing when you deflect a compliment, sitting with discomfort instead of instantly numbing it. Small moments of self-attunement, which may sound insignificant until you realize, for some people, nobody ever taught them their inner world was worth listening to. So learning to hear yourself becomes a radical act. There's a certain type of person that finds a video like this late at night, scrolling, restless, something unsettled. And then a word lands, emotional neglect, and something inside quietly shifts. Not relief, recognition, a strange internal echo, as if something long unheard finally made a sound. If that's happening to you right now, pay attention to it. That sensation isn't weakness. It's your nervous system doing something it maybe never learned to do properly. Reflecting, echoing, receiving. The sound was always worth echoing. It just needed a different room. And the deeper question becomes, if emotional neglect shapes how we experience ourselves, what other invisible childhood patterns are still shaping your behavior, relationships, and identity today? That's where the next layer begins.